Hello and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. My name's Tony. Thank you for joining us. If you're joining us live, thank you for being here. If you are catching us on the replay, then thank you so much for taking the time. If this is something that you're just finding for the very first time and you're wondering what in the world is Star Trek New Worlds, Star Trek New Worlds is a 4X turn-based strategy game that we play online using the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. And we play it online here for you using Vassal as a platform, which we'll see in a second using the maps. And of course, we stream it on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook Live. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If you haven't already, then please, take a second, hit that thumbs up. It helps, more people see this kind of content that hopefully you enjoy. And if this is your second, third, or fifth time back, then please consider subscribing. We're just trying to build a wonderful community here of players who enjoy games like these and like to have fun. So really looking forward to welcoming you to the community here. So what are we talking about today? Well, let me tell you, I teased about it yesterday, and we got some exciting stuff. So first of all, we're talking about the Feds, the ISC, the Hydrans at turn 32. We're going to sprinkle in a little bit of Romulan just for fun. We're going to show Klingon turn 32, and we're going to talk about this bottle as we progress through the episode. Okay, so it's an exciting day. I'm going to start, I suppose. I'll start with my fans, the Feds. As you can see, my background is blue. I'm a big fan of the Feds and what they're doing in the game. So let's start with them right here, right now. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is an exciting map. Why? Well, first of all, this is the Federation turn 32. So turn 31 has passed. They've been presented this map for turn 32, and they'll submit their turn. If you remember from yesterday's episode, if you don't remember that episode, then please go back and check it out after this is done. We talked about the Federation leading up to turn 30. We talked about the exciting things of them finding the Kzinti, which you will see here, right over here. So the Kzinti, they found this minor civilization or non-player civilization. They also have, of course, still the Tholians, which are here that they are currently dealing with a diplomat. We talked about the strategy of building this fleet of cruisers, equipping them with prime teams and sending them out into space to be able to explore, which of course we can see they're doing to great effect. You can see they're a little bit more spaced out and they're really pushing the boundaries out. Two exciting things about this map. We'll start with the teaser, and then we'll go into the thing that gets me excited. So first we can see that near here at the bottom, we've got a YCA. This is the first time in this game that we've seen a traditional shape, so to speak, for the Federation. We got that saucer design with the nacelle sticking out. It's very Enterprise-esque. So what that tells us, of course, is that the Federation at turn 32 not only have discovered Y tech, but they are building Y ships, specifically cruisers. And you can see that cruiser specifically is a 4.6, which is very standard across the board for a lot of cruisers of this time period at 4.6. You'll see as we go forward, there are a couple of races or factions that have slightly different numbers when it comes to cruisers and various different ship designs. But generally speaking, 4.6 is a good standard as far as Y-Tech cruisers. Now, here's the thing that gets me excited. That's the Tholians. Not only is it the Tholians, but it's not the Tholians that they found, this minor faction. This is a player. This is a player that they've bumped into on the map. Why is this so exciting? Okay, so a couple things to think about when we're looking at the map. This is a YFEL, so it's a slow-moving exploration freighter. You can see that there is a prime team embarked. It's called a Wolf Spider. That's the name we're giving it, because Tholians have just a different anatomy. So Wolf Spider, that's their prime team. And what is the visibility range on a YFES? Well, just like any other ship, it's 1 hex. So this ship can only see the other YFEL that's here. The YFEL the Federation one that is in close proximity, and if they have not yet discovered and explored this hex, the Tholians that is, then all they can detect is a slow-moving size class 3 sensor reading. And so no harm, no foul. But because the Federation had previously explored this hex, and they have a ship right there, they can see them. So that's so exciting. One of the things that's particularly interesting about this dynamic is that the player who is playing the Tholians is the GM from the previous game. A very experienced player, a player who has decided to take on a challenging, arguably a challenging faction to play, which is the Tholians. And yeah, so this is really interesting. The first player has bumped into another player. But this isn't the end of it. Let's just take a quick look at things like fleet cap. So let's take a quick look at the fleet cap. We'll move it off to the side here. We can see that the Federation has 12 ship equivalents. This is right in line with what we saw in turn 30. Still with a 3566 fleet cap. That's very good. We can see that, of course, the Kzinti, the Orion, the Tholians. Those are all just the Kzinti and the Orions are the minor factions, and the Tholian here is not this ship displayed, but rather the ship equivalents that are in the non-player characters hex. One thing to note: if and when the maps open up, the Tholian numbers on fleet cap will be tweaked a little bit because they'll be including the Tholians as non-player characters. So we'll have to kind of do the mental math as we go forward. So no big change for the Federation as far as ships built. Let's take away the ships for a second and just look at their distribution. We can see that this is the exact same base distribution that they had before. They basically built the hexagonal honeycomb shape with a slight repositioning for this particular YBS in Charlie Charlie 38 because obviously the Tholians were a little bit of a speed bump or an obstacle. So bringing the ships back, we can see again the exploration around the edges. You can see this convoy here is prepping, finish building that base, and probably will prep to go off and build the next one. This convoy here probably will head down this way, I expect, and build a base to prepare for the oncoming Tholian encounter, and we'll see how that goes. But that's so exciting. The Federation in turn 32 has bumped into the Tholians. So exciting. But that's not the end of it. No, no, no. Let's go to this map. And this is the one that just has me going bonkers. All right, so I'm a little zoomed out here, but let's just show you what we got. We've got the Hydrans. We've got the ISC, and there is another faction here. So what does this tell us? First of all, without diving into the numbers too much, obviously the ISC and the Hydrans have bumped into each other, ISC being the yellow, the Hydrans being the green. So they've bumped into each other, and why do we see both of these factions on one map? Let me show you. So as we zoom in here, we can see, and we'll take the ships away, we can see that as far as the ships encounter, bring the ships back here, you can see that the base here has 3 supply. 1, 2, 3. This base has 3 supply. 1, 2, 3. This is something we assessed when we looked at both maps previously. Both factions have 3 supply. So when they encountered each other, and these hexes were previously explored by each other, or by each faction, there is a clear path to either one to be able to open up supply. So what ends up happening is, from a game mechanics perspective, if one faction has supply to another supply point from another faction, and the path of supply has been fully explored, there's no fog, hexes fogged in between them, then basically what happens is the merchant fleet or traders will go back and forth between those points of supply, and they will share maps, they will share star charts, there will be rumors and everything. And so the information flow between non-military economy causes the population to know, oh, there's the ISC up there and the Hydrans down there, and the maps open up. In addition to this, there is the potential that those two factions shared their maps. And so when you encounter another faction, you can effectively say, well, why don't we swap maps? You show me yours, I'll show you mine, and they'll open things up from there. So that's another way this could have occurred as well. So either one works. The supply point, in the sense of 2 points of supply are in contact with each other or within range of each other, and or the open sharing of maps. But what's particularly interesting about this, as we zoom out, is you'll notice there is another border up here. But it's not being shown, or at least the faction that's there isn't sharing their map. So what does that mean? That means that that faction, whoever that is not in supply contact with the ISC. And as we zoom in, we can see that. We can see that they have supply 3, and they have not explored this neutral zone. So they don't know what's here. Unless there is a base right here, and they explore that hex and or decide to swap maps, they won't be able to share. They won't be able to share their open map. However, obviously there has been some kind of contact because there's been communication to establish this border zone, this neutral zone between them. So we know that there's a faction there, and that's the border they've agreed on. We know that there's obviously the ISC here and the Hydrans down below. Now let's bring the ships back ever so quickly. We can see that there is a YFEL, and it's obviously explored up to here. And so it would be my expectation that somewhere along here, there was an encounter with another ship, maybe in turn 31. And that resulted in the communication, or the maybe there is a base in this W column, and it detected that ship, and they sent out a transmission. From a role-playing perspective, they sent out a transmission, there was a response, and there's a back and forth. So think of it like when you think back to the original Star Trek television series and the Balance of Terror episode. That's the one where they fight the Romulans. So in that canon, the Romulans, they never saw the Romulans before. There had only been audio communication between them. And so if you think of that in this context, maybe there is a base on the other side of this, like in the whiskey column here. And they saw the YFEL going by. They reached out with a communication, and they established via audio communication, for example, the neutral zone, which would be kind of similar to what happened in TOS with regards to the Romulans, by example. Now, as we can see, the ISC has put this convoy here. They are going to build, I would expect, a base based on their build pattern, which is the sort of the box, remember? The convoy is here in the Yankee 23 hex, and again, these are all displaced. So, but in the context of this map, in the Yankee 23, they're going to probably build a base there. And once they do, it'll be really interesting to see if there is another sensor reading over here, i.e. another base. I expect there probably is, and certainly ships on this side exploring that, and that'll be really, really interesting to see. So really excited about that. In addition, and we'll get to the Hydran side in a sec, we've got an INI. So I think we talked about this before in yesterday's episode, but they have this gravity well here, and it would seem, if I zoom out, I don't see another Hydran or another ISC ship anywhere. So it would seem as though they have not sent anything through that gravity well. Now, totally understand it's reasonable perhaps not to. But what we have seen is that there is it looks like there's a minor faction here, which is currently ISC, but the neutral zone that's around it is, there we go. Yeah. I'll zoom out ever so slightly here so you can see. There you go. So we've got the gravity well, and then underneath this light cruiser is a colony. It's yellow, so it's part of the ISC sort of community, but the neutral zone is still there. You'll notice that it's indifferent, most likely because it was recently converted, but the neutral zone is still there. So I think that's probably a bit of a typo, so to speak. But speaking of that, let's just quickly go to the chat because the chat is alive and well. So Jim's in there. I can see Paul, Bill, Rosanna. Oh, Rosanna, you are spamming us. I appreciate that. We'll just get rid of that. So we got Chuck and Daniel. Daniel, you can let me know if that's on the GM for forgetting to remove the neutral zone hexes, he says. Okay, no problem. All right, so so that's what that looks like as far as the ISC. Let's scroll down to the Hydrans. So why would you send a ship through gravity well? Well, looks like the Romulans just did. This red right here is a W-era snipe. Snipe is basically a Romulan frigate, and it went through the gravity well. So, so interesting because who knows where they are, but they've popped out on the other side. So what will they see? When the ship pops out, it will see, it'll be in a fogged hex because it won't be able to explore, but it'll see like a sensor reading around it. So it'll be able to see this base, and that's it. It'll know that there is a base station there in the sense that it will be a certain size class and it's stabilized sensor reading, which means it's a stationary object. So if he moves towards it, he'll be able to discover that there's a base in that hex, but he won't know much else. Of course, if you do watch the live stream, you can see the map for yourself and you know what's there. But very interesting to see that. So we've got the Romulans have shown up. They have gone through a gravity well or gravity rift. So it's a one-way door, meaning that it was a one-way journey and they're crippled. So let me take a second right now to talk about the tech when it comes to wormholes. So here we can see we've got a little table. We have this is an Excel table, but basically it's a tech tree. And as you can see here in this column, we've got wormholes. And in this category, wormholes, once you discover a wormhole, you can sort of unlock this tech. And the first sort of milestone here is the prerequisite of successfully exploring a gravity rift or a wormhole. So usually what that means is you send like a survey cruiser or a ship with a prime team or whatever you want to send there to be able to explore, just like you would explore a fog of war hex. So you send the ship there, it explores the gravity well or gravity rift, and then once it's successfully done that, you can start researching. Now, what will end up happening is you send the R&D team. So an R&D team, just like a diplomatic team or a prime team, is a special team that you can build. They cost 5 to build. Once you have the ability to build those, you can send one and locate it on the gravity well or wormhole, and you can start conducting research and add to the wormhole tech. So we can see there, hey, Pulse Fired Gaming, welcome to the show. Nice to see you. We can see here that, again, the prerequisite is you must successfully explore a gravity rift or wormhole. And then the limitations at this point are no crippled ships can go through a gravity well or wormhole. So once you've gone through at this early stage and you're crippled, you can't go back without sort of being repaired. But of course, in this example that we'll go back to in a second, it's a gravity rift, so it's a one-way door. If this was a full wormhole, then going back through that same door would only be available to that ship if and when it was repaired. So slow units, meaning convoys and large or small survey freighters can't go through. And a ship is crippled on a 1 to 6. Now, this is on a 1d6 because this is normally a tabletop game. So on a 1d6, you're going to get crippled. Or 1 to 6, you'll get crippled, meaning that no matter what happens and you go through that wormhole, you will be crippled. And then the last thing here is maximum of 1 ship transit per battle round, meaning that if you were on a wormhole or a gravity rift and you were fighting a battle in that hex, you could, assuming you weren't crippled, retreat in a battle round through the wormhole of the gravity rift. You can only do 1 ship at a time per battle round, and that's how that goes. So, Pulsefire, so excited. He talked to me. Hi, Pulsefire, welcome to the community. Thank you so much for joining us here. And as we go down, you can see here there's a number of different tiers in the wormhole tech. So the first maybe 10 years after you start discovering wormhole tech, you will be able to transit with potentially not being crippled. You'll only get crippled on a 5 or a 6, so 30% chance. And then 30 years later, you can transit it without being crippled, and then eventually you'll be able to send slow units through, i.e. merchant ships, and that means you open up supply, meaning if you have a two-way wormhole, then you can have supply running through that wormhole. So that's a sort of an aspiring level of technology that allows you to really leverage wormholes and gravity rifts in the future. Keeping in mind that you cannot provide supply through a one-way gravity rift or gravity well, but you can do it through a wormhole. And as per sort of the evolving random events that occur, a wormhole can turn into a gravity rift, and a gravity rift can eventually turn into a wormhole. It is completely dependent on the events of the game, sort of a random event. There's no way to really sort of forecast if that's going to happen or not. But you can anticipate that there is the potential that it could happen in the future. So something to think about, really exciting. All right, let's go back to the map. So you can see here, like I said before, the Romulans have come through, and it's going to be exciting to see what happened. Now, as far as a role-playing context goes, the player who's playing the Hydrans was kind enough to share with us the initial hail that he sent out to the Romulans, and it goes as such. Salutations and greetings, alien oxygen-breathing brethren. Keeping in mind that the Hydrans, as per canon, breathe methane, so they're like truly alien, not like classic Star Trek aliens that breathe oxygen, like everyone's a human-looking alien. Hydrans are very different, so they are methane-breathing, look kind of tentacular, and so on. I am Felona, Chief Theologian aboard the base station Patha 3, representative of the Feroric, my goodness, my pronunciation, theocracy of the Star Empire of Hydrax. We are surprised to see your sudden appearance inside our space in such a poor state of repair. We have facilities here which can repair your damage, the damage you have sustained. One of our fleet cruisers has diverted course to intercept you and bring you to us at the station safely to effect efficacious repair expediently. We rejoice in meeting you, brethren, to add to the worship of the gods who we are all children of. We hope our mutual future resides in peace between our peoples. You find yourself within the critical core of honor of the Empire. We await your response to our offer of assistance and repair. As stated previously, a fleet cruiser has been diverted to assist you in this task. We have one thing to ask you, in good faith, to tell us where you came from, apart from your exiting the anomaly located in the Hex. Felona, Chief Theologian, Hydran Base, Patha 3, Feroric Theocracy of the Star Empire of Hydrax. So, if it wasn't clear from that communique, the Hydrans are a raging theocracy. They are highly religious, Bible thumping, so to speak, from their religious book, whatever that is, and they are very devout. So they are bringing that sort of theological approach to interacting with different species, and it'll be interesting to see how the exchange goes back and forth. As we saw here, they're just sort of greeting the Romulans, and we'll see what happens as we go forward. But it's going to be interesting to see how this particular character of the religious Hydrans is going to play out in interacting with other factions. Obviously, it's worked out well with the ISC because they've established a border. There seems to be some cooperation to a certain degree, and things are going along. Let's take a quick look at Fleet Cap, because this is the first map that we're going to be able to look at where we're going to be able to see all the the comparison between Fleet Cap between, let's say, the ISC and the Hydrans. So let's move this out of the way. We can see this over here. The Hydrans currently have a ship equivalent of 12, and we'll get to that in a second. I know that the player is watching and he wants to talk about the naming of his certain ships. So we've got the Hydrans ship equivalent of 12, attack factors of 19, defense of 56. The ISC have 6 ship equivalents with a 16-44 split. And so what's interesting about that, I find particularly interesting, you've got half the number of ships from the Hydran side, or sorry, from the ISC side. But the attack factors are very close, and the defense factors also very close. So it's an interesting representation of the potential of the ISC. The ISC are known to have sort of like heavy ships in the sense of they bring a lot of punch to the fight, but they're also expensive. The Hydrans at this stage of the game are very sort of par for the course when it comes to price per pound or price value for the ships that they're getting. You pay what you have to pay to build them, and then what you get as a result is very sort of standard, generally speaking. One of the things that's interesting is the number of tugs that the Hydrans have. This is, I'm sure, what the player would like to discuss. Just to note, there are 4 tugs that are currently in operation on the Hydran side. And he's named them, such as Pestilence, Death, War, and Famine. It was pointed out a little earlier by the game master that it was particularly ironic that the tug known as Famine was providing a supply mission to other ships to extend supply. A little ironic. The choice of using the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to name your ships after, very interesting, of course, tying in with the religious connotations of the Hydran theocracy. But yeah, it's interesting. Other than that, as you can see, let's just take away the ships for a second. You can see their base distribution is as per what we discussed before. It's generally speaking this 3 hex spread. You can see that to the north, basically we're going in these pentagonal cardinal directions at this point. You can see that there's a straight up north, there's kind of a northwest, there's a northeast. It's not exactly bang on because, of course, the location of the homeworld relative to these bases is not quite aligned in that way. But it's sort of looking, I was going to say squiddy, but it's got these arms outstretched. And so anyways, it'll be very interesting to see how this evolves and how this player builds out his infrastructure and base network. Bringing back the ships, you can see that he's preparing to build more. For example, War, one of his tugs, is in the bottom here, ready to probably build a base and extend his reach south. Pestilence looks like it's going to be building a base along the border with the ISC, and Death close behind it. Again, these are just the names that he's given his tugs. We can see, of course, that the Hydrans have built a GRN, which is a Y-era cruiser. And then, of course, he's got his noble fleets. The old Colony Squadron, let's just take a quick look at that. Old Colony Squadron. So the old Colony Squadron is a combination of 3 frigates, or musketeers. And it looks like those musketeers are W-era ships, where the Vol is a Y-era ship. So you can see the Vol right above it. The difference just being the musketeers move 3, have a 2 attack and 2 defense. The Vol can move 4, and it has a 2-3 split respective. And of course, he's going to deal with, however he's going to deal with the Tholians. I believe that we can probably prompt the player in the chat to give us a little insight on what he's thinking and what he's going to do with those Tholians. Yeah, there's a certain kind of approach there. Let's go quickly to the chat and talk to... Let's see. So we saw Pulsefire Gaming has joined the chat. So hi once again. Thank you for joining us. Paul and Jim and everyone's saying hello. Paul's making a joke about the theocracy being the Book of Squid. And of course, Jim, the player who's playing the Hydrans, talking about the words of the great prophet. So yes, again, the religious overtones, it's pretty thick in this, but that's all part of the role-playing fun. And as we move along. The ISC, like we talked about before, building out their bases in that sort of boxy network. And we can see, based on the location of the convoys, they're looking to continue to build out to extend that reach. Looks like to the north, build out the bases along the border, and also to be able to make advantage or take advantage of, oh, my head's in the way, take advantage of this stretch, sort of this, what do you want to call it, like an arm of territory that they've negotiated with their various neighbors. So that'll be very interesting to see as that evolves. All right, exciting. Okay, so last one is the Klingons. Let's take a quick look. Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my hometown. This is turn 32 as per the other turn. So we've seen the Hydrans, we've seen the ISC with a smattering of Romulans, we've seen the Federation with a smattering of Tholians, and now we're looking at the Klingon Empire. So, one thing I will do, I'll go back briefly to this map and show you the EP. This is a particularly interesting split to look at. The Hydrans have a 26 EP economy, which is excellent. The ISC have a 22.5. So based on all the other factions that we've encountered and seen, those two numbers, so the Hydrans are on the higher end, probably just above average. The ISC are at the top end of average. And we've seen, for example, the Federation, we can go back and see them in a second, they were floating around the 19 mark. So generally speaking, when it comes to economy, the Hydrans and the ISC are at the head of the pack, so to speak. So that's really good. Let's just take a quick look at the Federation and touch on that EP note. So as you can see here, the Federation are now at 20. So we've got 20, 22.5, and 26 respectively. So you can see there's sort of a cluster around that sort of low to mid 20 mark. And so that's really good. That's sort of par for the course and generally the spread of the average. So with that said, let's go to the Klingons, and we can see a couple things happening here. From the last turn, and I know it's been a while since we've looked at the Klingons, from the last turn, we've seen the construction of YFESs. So we can see there's a couple YFESs here that are making their way to the edge of unexplored space to be able to explore. We can see that we currently have our task groups, which are the Joint Task Force Bravo, Alpha, and Home Fleet going off and doing their exploration. We can see we have the D3 Echoes, which are our survey ships. They are doing their exploration. You can see that here and north here. We can see that the D4N, which is the diplomatic ship, which had the honor duel with the Lyrans, is damaged and currently undergoing repair at the base station in Romeo 42, as per this map. And we can see that, let's just take away the ships real quick. We can see the build pattern of bases that we have here. So we've got the sort of half hexagonal pattern because, of course, the Fenris Omega, which is the former Carnarvon colony planet, has been, we put a base on it and it's sort of out of position. So based on its position, this is kind of what we're looking at. And then we can see that the bases are continuing to go north and south respectively. We'll see that Conciliator's Claw is a point of supply because it's a planet. We're going to probably build a base there and assist obviously with its defense, but also to be able to, help us have repair capability going forward. And then you can see that we're really pushing, essentially the way this is going is sort of in this direction from this perspective, the sort of northwest of this position in the map, that and sort of north and south. So a very kind of like tall exploration pattern, if we'll call it that. Bringing back the ships, again, the exploration freighters going out, the task groups doing their thing, and let's just take a quick look at our numbers. Let's look at fleet cap. So we saw, for example, in the Federation example, they had a very impressive fleet cap of, I believe it was over 60. Let's just take another quick look. Their fleet cap was 66. 12 ship equivalents, 35-66 split, right? So when we go to the Klingons, by comparison, we have 14 ship equivalents, and we have a 31-53 split. So it's you'll notice the difference between the 56 fleet cap and the 53. That's because of the crippled ship, the D4N. Once that's repaired, you'll notice it'll go back to being 56. But that's the 14 ship count, ship equivalent, and the split. So you can see that from a purely militaristic perspective, we are very similar to what we're seeing in the Terran or Federation Empire. Let's look at EP. This is where the Klingons are really sort of outside the envelope. The Klingons in turn 32 have an economy of 30.5. That is noticeably outside the norm. As we saw with the Federation, they're at 20. We saw with the Hydrans, they're at 26, 22.5 for the ISC, and the other factions we'll see as these turns come. But that puts them, the Klingons that is, the Klingons are just outside the norm when it comes to the economy. One thing to think about, that is not something to get all hot and bothered about. Statistically, and I've seen this happen many times, you'll have a player get a certain degree of luck, which is essentially what's happened here. Luck when it comes to the exploration, discovery of resources in this case, and planets and so on. So the lucky rolls have gone my way, so to speak, to this point. Luck always changes. So other factions will get their luck at some point. We've seen, for example, the appearance of wormholes and various other things. Those are things that we don't have in the Klingon Empire. We don't have access to wormholes. That's a huge, and being able to explore that technology is a huge advantage. In the past, in the previous game, we did that early. Haven't been doing it now. Very interesting to see how that's going to evolve. So 30.5 is the EP for the Klingon Empire, and it's really going to be important to be able to sort of map that going forward, continuing the exploration to be able to continue to leverage that, and of course leverage the economic piece to be able to really drive that ball forward. But to give you a sense of sort of the delta or the difference here, you've got from the factions that we've looked at just now, we've got on one side the Federation at 20, 22.5 for the ISC, 26 for the Hydrans. So that's a 6 EP split between the high and the low there, and then 30.5 for the Klingons, which from the Hydrans to the Klingons is only a 4.5 split. So, there is a range here, and by no means is anyone sort of running away with it by any means. Like I say, the luck will even out. Just give it time. Yes. So I was going to take a second here and just talk about it. Since we're talking about economy, we talked about planets in the last episode. And one thing I wanted to just take a second and show was the iconography around the planets we're using. So you can see here, as I look to this side, you can see here, there we go. You can see the colony, developing planet, minor planet, medium planet, and major planet. Now, we talked about this in the last game. These are what they look like on the map. So you can see the colony is that dome shape with the dot. Once it evolves into a developing planet, it becomes a circle with a dot. And then the dot disappears, becoming the minor planet. Then you got the big dome on top and the little dome on the bottom for the medium planet. And then the major planet is the big ball. To look at this from a numbers perspective, it goes from 1 to 5. 1 at the top, 5 at the bottom, and you just fill in the gap in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the economic points that you'll get out of these various planets. And then when we see them and we encounter them in the game, and you see them devastated or recovering or developing, we'll go over that as we see it, so you can contextually see what's happening from an economic standpoint with different players in the game. But as a visual representation, this is what you see in the game on the map for colonies, developing planets, minors, mediums, and majors. So that is what you will see. There we go. Okay, so what have we talked about today so far? We've talked about the Federation. We talked about the ISC, the Hydrans, the smattering of Romulans, the smattering of Tholians. We've talked about the Klingons, all up to turn 32. And what have we seen? We have seen this prolific sort of expansion of the discovery of other players. The Hydrans have bumped into the ISC, and there's another faction there that we don't know. The Romulans have bumped into the Hydrans. The Tholians have bumped into the Feds. And, of course, the Klingons are, playing by themselves. So to honor this momentous occasion, let's talk about the bottle. So the bottle today is all about celebrating the beginning of the end or the next phase of this game. Up until this point, we have played this game in sort of pockets of seclusion. Every faction has submitted these turns in bursts, like 5 or 10 or more at a time. And we've been able to walk those turns forward as relatively quickly as possible, because there has been such distance and space between all the different players. Obviously, that is no longer the case. People are bumping into each other, and stuff is going to happen. So whereas in the past, we've shown you turns of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, now, as we move forward, things are going to get much more interesting. The maps are going to get much more dynamic. There's going to be a lot more interaction and play when it comes to the role-playing and potential conflicts or sort of alliances and teamwork that's going to occur. And this is where the game gets real, so to speak. So, to be able to celebrate this momentous occasion, I would like to take this bottle of Maker's Mark Kentucky Bourbon, and I will crack this open, and I will celebrate with my fellow players in the chat and with you, the audience members, to say we have reached a pivotal point in the game. We have reached a point where we will now be progressing turns at a much slower rate, 1 or 2 at a time. Generally speaking, for those of us that are playing the game and for those who are looking at the game from outside, this is a point where we're going to probably go 1 or 2 turns for every stream that you see. We'll see how quickly we can get through it, because it depends on how quickly players are able to see, process, and then submit their turns. But this is the turn-based component of this game. If you were doing this in real life in like a tabletop scenario, it would happen relatively quickly, because you go across the table, it's your turn, and then they're done, and now it's my turn, and so on and so forth. But in this sort of online environment that we're playing it in, we send messages over Discord, emails with our turns, and various other sort of information to be able to process and sort of direct what we're doing in the game. But it definitely happens at a pace, and our wonderful GM Daniel is the puppet master, sort of pulling the strings, making sure that the processing of those turns and everything happens sort of with a degree of quality, no mistakes are made, and that we all get our turns in a timely manner. Keeping in mind, this game is a sort of a in-person processed game. This is not like we have some kind of algorithm or program in the background doing all the calculations for us. We do have tools that we use, but it's all people-based. So people, the most wonderful part about this game, part of this community, and of course the critical component when it comes to the timeliness of the turns is what we depend on and what we love about this game. The interaction, the fun, the good times. So, speaking on good times, I would like to toast the moving to the next phase of this campaign. As we approach the new year, I wish you all well, and I look forward to bumping into and destroying my various neighbors as I encounter them. Celebration to everybody. Congratulations on bumping into each other. Hula. Woo-hoo. That's actually really good. Yeah, that's really good. So let's take a minute as I recover and go to the chat real quick. So we have Jim talking about the heresy exists in the universe and the heresy must be expunged. Of course, really leaning into the role-playing aspect that we're talking about with the religious theocracy. Chuck is saying, if I was involved with this mess, my fangs would be needing sharpening. So, for example, Chuck is playing the Lyrans, and as we've talked about, I believe we've discussed, if not alluded to the fact that the Lyrans are being played as a warlike faction, much like the Klingons. And so it's going to be very interesting to see who bumps into them and how that works, because the Lyrans are... as we've just seen here, are going to be played out in a very potentially aggressive manner. Looking forward to seeing who bumps into them. Jim saying, you are welcome to a sermon, i.e., of course. Daniel, when you're at peace, your income is half. So 6-point lead is really only about 3 more income normally. So that's a really good point. Let's take a second and dial in on that. In this game, there are 3 states of your economy: peace, limited war, and war. So for anyone who's actually played F&E before, you'll get a sense of what that's all about. But in this game, it maps it this way. There is a total number of EP that we see on the screen. So for example, we just talked about the Klingons being 30.5. That's the total economy. While you're at peace, you only get half or 50% of that income. So 15.25. And that's the income that you have to spend and work with from turn to turn to turn. When you're at limited war, which is a state of war, think of it like rising to a police action. That limited state of war can exist for a total of, and limited to, 4 turns, or essentially 2 years. Spring, fall, spring, fall. And then once you've passed the 4-turn mark, you can revert back to peace, or you can go to war. In our game, you use limited war when you are fighting or warring against a minor faction. So, for example, the Tholians for the Hydrans. We did that with the Carnivons and the Lyrans early on in the Klingon turns, and so on. Once you've passed that 4 turns, so you have to adopt a war status, and when you go to war, you get 100% of your income. And what's important about that as well is when you're in peacetime, you have the fleet cap constraint. So, for example, you have your EP, so the income that you have, times a number based on your tech. So 5, 6, 7, and 8 respectively. You take that number, times it by the level of technology that you're at. So at Y-Tech, I believe it's 6. So you take that number, times it by 6, and that's the total fleet cap that you can support. And so that's just your economy can supply food and fuel and various things to these certain amount of ships. That is the supply fleet cap that you have. While in peace, you're limited to that fleet cap. You're limited to the total amount that you can supply. If you go above that number, then you start incurring sort of a penalty cost of half 0.05 of an EP per point over fleet cap. We can do the math on that later once that occurs, but long story short, you've got a limited number of ships that you can support in peacetime. Once you go to limited war and war status, that changes, and there is no limitation. So that's the advantage of war, limited war status, versus peace. However, for every turn that you are at war, you incur a war turn. Once you get to 20, the 21st turn, you start incurring economic penalties. You start only getting 75% of your income. Once you get to 30, it's 50% of your income, and it grows from there. We've never been in a situation where the economic fatigue or the war turn fatigue factors in as of yet, but as we go through this game and wars occur, it's something to be cognizant of, because the cumulative effect of concurrent wars will have an impact on your economy. You can recover from those war turns only in peacetime, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every 2 turns you're at peace, you recover one war turn. So 2-to-1 in that respect. So if you're at war for 10 turns, it'll take you 20 to recover, and so on. So something to think about, and the effective or strategic use of war will be something that will play out in this game in a very interesting way. So something really interesting to think about. Looking forward to seeing how this evolves going forward. Like I say, congratulations to everyone on bumping into each other. I look forward to joining the club when the time comes. But congratulations to all of my other players. Daniel, Paul, Jim, all whooping and sharing cheers, Chuck. And my ship goes through gravity well next turn, Paul says. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so we're going to see some interesting things as it comes in the next little while. Once this stream is over, I got to process my turn, and away we go. Again, just as a reminder, 3 things. 1, there will be no live stream on next Saturday, as next Saturday is Christmas, so we won't be coming to you live. However, be on the lookout on the channel, as in, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to intermittently be doing various live streams and or publishing new content over the next 2 weeks between now and New Year's Day. Basically, targets of opportunity. When I have opportunity to sit down and put together something, I'll be putting out content as it comes. But it'll be very sort of hodgepodge or not on any particular schedule. So if you want to see that as it comes out, make sure you have notifications enabled and you'll be able to see that as it comes out. The second piece, I want to thank so much our community. As of the broadcast, as of going live here today, we are now at 81 subscribers, and the goal for this year, before New Year, was to hit 100, or is to hit 100, I should say. So we've got 19 to go, 19 subscribers to go. Can we hit 100 in the next 2 weeks before New Year's Day? I'm really hoping that on New Year's Day, when we go live, we're going to be at that number 100, and we'll be able to celebrate the dawning of 2022 with the fact that we've hit the 100 subscriber mark, which of course is just part of the journey as we go through YouTube to be able to broaden the reach, build this community of players who just love having fun and playing this game together. And last note for all of you, if you are interested in playing this game, then I encourage you to reach out to me on Facebook. The chat at the very beginning of this episode, I have put in the chat the link to our Facebook page. You can follow us there, and of course, reach out to me individually on Facebook Messenger and let us know that you're interested in playing this game. We are currently making a list of individuals who are interested in playing this for the next campaign, and we're looking for exciting ways to be able to involve all of you that are interested in playing in the game in some way, shape, or form. Maybe that's perhaps somewhere down the line becoming a minor faction, or as was the case in the last game, players being introduced later in the game. We haven't firmed up what that will look like, but are very interested to hear from you, our community, as to what you would like to do, how you would like to be involved, and what you would like to see. So please message me, let me know that you're interested, and we want to be able to reach out to you and include you as much as we can in this gameplay, because it's fun on our side. There's a joke about the addictive nature of these turns, and you're jonesing for the next one to come. The excitement, the anticipation of knowing to see what's next. Like I just, showed you the fact that Tholians are now bumping into the Feds, the ISC, the Hydrans, like everybody's bumping into everybody. It is so exciting to see, and really sort of excited to see how this game evolves. So really looking to involve you as much as we can. That's pretty much it. Any and all comments that you have, positive or negative, please put them in the comments below. Really want to hear and see what you have to say about the content that we're producing. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Would you like to see something better? What do you think about the thumbnail? The little kid peeking out, I see you. Anything and everything that you want to comment on, please feel free. Share tactics, strategies, opinions, whatever you want, as long as it's all in good fun and in support of the game, because that's what we're here to do, is have a good time. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today on today's live stream. One last cheer to everybody. Oh, I'm going to have to do that again when I bump into somebody. Excuse me. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday season, and be on the lookout for random content coming from this channel between now and New Year's Day. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you soon.